Hey, welcome back to the Conscious Environment Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you guys enjoyed February because I had a lot of fun doing the Say What history stories. And we're going to do those once a month from now on, but let's just jump right back into it with our regularly scheduled topics of debate, I guess. These aren't really things I debate, but we're going to talk about them anyway. So this week, I got a chance to sit down with Alina Gene, and we got a chance to talk about transphobia in the Black community. We also talked about media representation, and we talked about a bunch of stuff. So I hope you guys really enjoyed the conversation. It was great sitting down with Alina. He's an awesome, really fun person to talk to. So I hope you guys enjoyed the conversation that we had.
On the podcast, how I usually start it is just with what's your name and where people can find you. Just introduce yourself.
Great. So I'm Alina Gene. You can find me over on TikTok, alina.gene. I'm also on Instagram as Alina Gene, YouTube, Alina Gene Lee, and patreon.com/Alina Gene.
Awesome. And you talk about a ton of different stuff. So I don't even know. I know what we're going to talk about tonight, but like, is there anything in particular that you want to let people know that like this is what you discuss?
Intersectionality is a nice umbrella term because I touch on things with race and gender and neurodivergence and classism and nerd culture and stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah, your neurodivergent videos is kind of like what brought me to you at first. Those were the first videos that I first saw from you, and then it was like they talk about everything. Everything is so well informed. But what we're talking about tonight is something that I feel like has come across my FYP so much in the last few days, and it's like it's grossing me out and really kind of like making me angry as of late. Is just this. It feels like like something new, or maybe I'm just not exposed to it, but it's just it feels new that there's so much transphobia in the Black community, or maybe it's just something that I didn't experience. And I feel like the scales have come off of my eyes, and I'm just seeing it so much more and just so prevalent. And a big catalyst was kind of the side eye with the Harry Potter stuff. And we'll get into that in a second. But I think that kind of was, hey, why are we doing this? And then I saw a couple of videos that you were talking about with this idea, and how there's kind of a lead with the alt-right pipeline, and we'll get into that in a second. But first of all, I feel like a lot of people don't like have an understanding of what it means to be trans, or what our definition is for the purposes of this conversation. So if you wanted to just give like a quick description, somebody says like, what does it mean to be trans, or what does trans mean? What would you say to that?
Yeah. So being trans at the most simple, oversimplified definition is just not identifying with the gender that you were assigned at birth. In the media, when we talk about trans people, we usually see trans women. So that would be someone who was assigned to masculinity as a gender role and then decided to embrace womanhood. But it goes in the opposite direction. Some people don't really identify with either ends of the gender binary that we've created. Also, I want to just throw out that intersex people exist. A lot of the misunderstandings and confusions around what it means to be trans come from the fact that people automatically equate woman with female and man with male, in this idea that, well, it's just biology. You know, we've got men and women, males and females, and it's not that straightforward. So like, I don't know, trying to say, what does it mean to be trans is kind of like asking me, what does it mean to be Black? Like, if you're a white person, you're not really going to understand it, but you don't have to understand it to not be hateful. So like when it comes to like the trans stuff, cisgender people aren't really gonna get it. And like that's okay. You don't have to get it to not be hateful, if that makes sense.
Ooh, do me a favor, say that last line one more time because I think we're gonna need to hear that a few times.
Yeah. You don't have to understand it to not be hateful.
I think a lot of people miss that part. With a lot of things, they try to break it down into something or put it into these tiny boxes that we can understand this. I can't even say sixth grade biology because my daughter is learning more nuanced biology around this, and she's in the sixth grade. So we're talking kindergarten levels of biology of just man and woman. Okay, that's all you can get at this point. But yes, intersex people exist. Many different people exist, and you don't have to understand them to not hate them. And I think a lot of people miss that. And something that's coming up so much, I guess, in the Black community is that there just seems to be this almost new divisive topic. And you talk a lot about intersectionality, and you fit into this intersection yourself. So is this something that's always kind of been bubbling under the surface, and we just see spurts of it when something enters the zeitgeist, or are you seeing a shift in the community?
So both, like, so TikTok is a tricky sumbitch for one thing, if I can say that. And the algorithms are just like this. So of course they all run off of hate attention. So we are going to see more things like that. Kind of social media is its own conversation of the rise of these sort of things. But also, like, fundamentally, we live in white supremacist patriarchal capitalism, and the hatred against trans people, it comes from heteronormativity and just this general, it's in the water. It's like, is there really an uptick in racism, or are we just seeing the racism that's always been there? Same thing with this. And I will say, like, as someone that's in the trans community, if I can give a little extra spicy pieces, there have been conversations about what it's like to have being trans in the media right now. Like, someone who is transitioning, even in the early 2000s, could essentially just walk into the DMV and get their gender marker changed because the clerk would just assume there was a clerical error somewhere, right? To get that changed from male to female. But nowadays, because trans people are more visible, there are some states where they've made the process really simple and we're supporting trans rights. And there's some states where they're like, oh, we found a new way to make your life hell. Let's make a bunch of rules against this in order so that you cannot change, like, the gender marker on your driver's license or like your passport. There's some states where you can't change your birth certificate, like stuff like that. So trans people generally are more visible than we were 10, 20, 30 years ago. And I think that does have something to do with the hate and the rise of that we're seeing now.
Yeah. I didn't even think about that. So trying to change something simple, like, because I guess I don't understand where the transition happens, because I guess it happens differently for different people. Some people, a designation on your driver's license would be something that's important, and for some people it would just be maybe your social circle or your friends being accepting of it.
Oh yeah, it's complicated. So yeah, like you've got trans people who are, kind of like flipping their gender, so to speak, where like someone, what's the the one everybody knows in the media, just any visible trans woman, like, no, but not, no, I don't want to be mean. Crap. What, the one that was on South Park that everyone, Erase.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about, but Caitlyn Jenner. Is that who we're thinking of? Yes.
Okay, so yeah, like someone like Caitlyn Jenner, like had a very prominent media identity within masculinity, like as being an Olympian and all that, right? And then has flipped and is
Right.
a Kardashian and is doing fashion and all that, right? Like some trans people have that sort of experience, and for someone like Caitlyn Jenner, like having a gender marker changed is a big deal because it's all about like just literally being able to live your life, right? But some trans people are non-binary, and aren't really interested in a medical or social transition like that, where they're totally switching, right? Sometimes you
Right.
have people that just, you know, oh, well, I'm just changing my name and the way I dress. For some people, that's what makes them comfortable. Some people may want to like fully medically transition, but still maintain an identity that's like non-binary or gender fluid, even though you can see this person has like 10 years of effects of testosterone or estrogen. Like being trans is big and messy and confusing. I don't even understand it half the time. Like we have a lot of, in the same way that Black people have lots of different ways of defining Blackness in those conversations. It's not like all trans people agree on things. And that's the whole, like, you don't have to understand it to not support genocide.
Right. Like I was actually just having a conversation, kind of preparing for this conversation with a few friends of mine, and I was talking about just even in the school that my daughter attends, we were talking about this idea of, are there more queer children, or is the world more accepting of it? Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah.
was there just the same amount of people that's always existed, but now those kids feel more okay coming out and having that be just part of their identity? Because like there's children in her class that in my kids' class that they're completely on a wide spectrum of everything. Like
Yeah.
completely wide spectrum, and they all are just so supportive of each other. They're very supportive of each other, and to a degree where it's like they built their own community. But even as far as I can tell from my kids' description of their class, even the straight cis children aren't like, that isn't a topic. Like when I was a kid, you got made fun of for being quote unquote gay. That was the thing. You could get made fun of for that. If you were a male presenting and you were too feminine, you were gay, and that was a slur and that was a bad thing, and whatever it meant. We were just being mean to each other, being awful to each other. And that's not the thing. They make fun of each other for way different stuff, because kids are still mean, but they're just mean in very different ways. And I just think it's so interesting that it's like, out of all the things that I thought you all would have made fun of each other for, this isn't one of them. And I love that. Like, I love that. Like, it's somebody's saying in the comments, it's becoming more unmasked, because I think Gen Alpha is probably going to surpass us when it comes to things like this, because they're living in it. They're living in a world where trans people are so much more visible, and it's so much more normalized to a degree. We're still having a strange argument, and we're going to get more into that in just a moment, because I want to ask you a great question that somebody dropped in the comments, talking, just kind of circling back a little bit to Caitlyn Jenner. Now, Caitlyn Jenner has said some interesting things about their past, and I think that's really interesting when it comes to your previous life or before you transition. Please stop and correct me if I'm saying anything strange, because I don't know how to describe this, but I think I know what I mean. In your previous life before you transition. So I've seen interviews where Caitlyn has been asked if she's an athlete still, or if she considers herself an athlete, and she always says yes, that I'm still an athlete. I'm still the same person, but Caitlyn Jenner was always the athlete. The other persona was the mask, and I'm not even if I don't like this person, I'm not going to dead name them. So who they were before they transitioned, that was the mask. Caitlyn Jenner was always the runner, was always the Olympian, was always the athlete. And somebody brought up, do you think that especially white but trans women who transition bring over heteronormative stereotypes? Because sometimes even people who transition still uphold heteronormativity, if that makes sense. Like I've seen that kind of, and it almost like it feels like it doesn't make sense to me. But like I've seen people who've transitioned be, I guess I don't have another word for it, but like homophobic.
Yeah.
So, after they transition.
Yeah. So I mean, like, Candace Owens is probably even more anti-Black now that she has money, right? Like any community is going to have yucky people in it with anti-community beliefs, right? The idea of like someone who was like assigned male at birth carrying over elements of their male privilege or patriarchal beliefs into their identity as a trans woman. This is a real slippery slope conversation, because this whole thing of socialization, of you were socialized as this at birth, is often used to reinforce a lot of transphobic ideas, and like to ignore that person's like current gender identity. So like on the idea of Caitlyn Jenner specifically, what I will say is that white people, that she's white first before like not to rank people's marginalizations now, but she's still white, okay? And like misogyny is inherently linked with racism. That's why we have this word like misogynoir. And I could talk about trans people within athletics and how that plays into misogynoir. Like that's a whole different conversation. Like most of the stuff that we do against trans women in sports actually just ends up getting used against Black women, because we are Black and therefore we do not fit the white supremacist mold of femininity. And like all that stuff, like this is how all the white supremacy and the things that they're linked. But so like in the case of Caitlyn Jenner having like problematic takes, I guess we could say, that is going to be because she's white. And that is going to be because all of us are in a patriarchal society. Like there's lots of women, cisgender women, who are misogynistic as hell, who are very anti-feminist, who are pick-me's, so to speak. Like we have words for this behavior in cisgender women. Of course, it exists in transgender women. Women be on fuck shit. People be on fuck shit. I don't know.
Yeah, that's I can't think of a better way to say it. I was looking for the words. Yes, and that's thank you for that clarification, because I was trying to really understand. It's because not that the existence is new, but it's new in the zeitgeist, in the cultural conversation. A lot of cis people we don't know the words, we don't know the language, and we're listening to trans people to tell us what the language is, but we're trying to still like kind of come up with like the vernacular. There's some things that I don't particularly understand. Somebody's saying in the comments, she's also from a much older generation. That could play into it as well. Yes. Sometimes I kind of him and ha at like the age thing, because in every single generation, there's people that aren't the bad thing that we're saying. So in every generation, there were people that weren't racist. In every generation, there are people that aren't misogynist. In every generation, there are people who aren't insert whatever homophobic. That they've always existed. There's So to just say because she's a certain age, she's in her 60s or whatever, that means that she's more likely to lean towards this. I think that's more because she's rich and white than it is because of her age. I think she lives in a different world than a lot of other people do.
Exactly.
Some people are talking about internalized misogyny and transphobia, but that kind of goes back to what you were saying about like socialization, and that's sort of a slippery slope there. Like you kind of gotta go a little bit closer. Go easy with like kind of that sort of conversation. Just to do a sidebar really quick because some people are asking in the comments. This is just a recording of a podcast. It's going to come out in a couple of weeks. The conversation that we're having right now is about transphobia, and we're going to get to how that's affecting the Black community and why it's becoming, I wouldn't even say more prevalent, but I'll say more visible or kind of louder. Do you think that's fair to say?
Louder.
Yeah, it's becoming a little louder in the Black community. And right now, you said something, I think it was yesterday or maybe the day before. We were talking in a couple of videos going back and forth, but we've seen these wedge issues start to come up. And as, you know, educators and learners start tracking these things, we start noticing a lot of this rhetoric is coming from the alt-right. And it is to definitely recruit more voting power and more support from different aspects of the Black community. We've seen it a lot with like kind of the manosphere and the podcast bros and misogyny. And what we're now seeing is this sort of appeal to cis feminism in the establishment of gender roles, and we're seeing that, and that's manifesting itself a lot with transphobia being kind of the default response to that. So, have you seen? I guess where do you think this kind of alt-right sort of thing is coming from? Or can you speak to that just a little bit? Because I think you could do a better job than I'm doing right now. Kind of explaining like what that means.
You're great. Okay. So, wait, quick summary of the question. Are we back to the list of questions? Because I had responses.
Yeah, sorry. So a lot of the Black community right now is being targeted by the alt-right. And one of the awful side effects is we're seeing a volume raise in transphobia. And I just wanted you to kind of speak to like your experience with that, or what you've seen, or what kind of patterns you've noticed, so people know what to look for.
Yeah. Oof. Gosh. Okay. So I do lots of dog whistle videos for actively what to look for. But the alt-right is kind of like a boogeyman, and not in the sense that like it's a fictional thing we shouldn't be afraid of. It's very real, but the alt-right is murky coalescence of beliefs. In some pockets of the alt-right, you have like your pissy Reddit atheist, and that's where you get to more and like the manosphere type stuff and the incel things, and that's what we see a lot with these Black male podcasters. But for all of the super sciencey pissy atheist people, you have all of these new age spirituality religious people, right? And like the weird dichotomy of this is how the real iconic picture from January 6th was the guy with the Viking horns saying that he wanted vegan food, right? Because he's pulling off of paganism and like this Nordic ancestry thing and this like, but still pseudo-scientific stuff with veganism and anti-vaxxing. Well, not to say that being a vegan is pseudo-scientific, but there's a crunchy holistic, back to
Mm-hmm.
earth sort of a lifestyle that goes into that, where you start with anti-vaxxing and then you're way over into flat earthers, like craziness, right? And that is the alt-right. It's not, there's one giant YouTube conglomerate, so to speak, like PragerU, I believe it's called.
Yes.
That has kind of looped together a lot of the content creators, and PragerU is very dangerous because it is so big. You have people on there like Ben Shapiro. Everybody knows that that's hate speech. But then also Mike Rowe. Remember the show Dirty Jobs from Discovery Channel?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot he does stuff like that now. Yeah.
Yeah, he's on there. And like that's literally their plan, is that they take stuff that you would assume is normal, and that's how we get a pipeline. So like with gender heteronormativity and like the gender binary being reinforced that we're seeing, like a lot of that, it starts off with like, oh, this is simple dating advice, right? We see that with the incels and the manosphere and the Black podcaster, but we also have Black male podcasters, all the male podcasters. Ugh. But I mean, there's also femininity coaches, and there's women doing the exact same shit.
Right.
And when women do it, it usually has more of a neo-spirituality vibe to it, with like tarot and Wicca and stuff. And
right.
This is where it gets real sticky and sticky, because with the new age spirituality stuff, and this is how I think a lot of Black people specifically get linked into it. This is the most latest episode of South Park was making fun of this, oh my God, that episode's a mess. But anyway, the ancient Egyptian mythology, I feel like in history is kind of a bridge point with the Greco-Roman stuff and with a lot of Pan-Africanism. And that I think is how we're getting a lot of like Black Hebrew Israelite stuff that starts to get sketchy, because that is often playing into like the way that like Christianity is based in patriarchy and this white supremacist stuff. And I know the Black Hebrew Israelite thing is not the same as the Christianity thing, but there's like little doorways where these extremist beliefs end up leaking into the Black community, because on the one end we have white people with the evangelical Christian death cult, right? And like that's its own thing. But there's little threads between that and some of the really, really toxic aspects of like Black Christianity, right? And that's how we start getting into like the transphobia and stuff. Like I want to blame all of this on the alt-right. I want to blame it on the ops, but they're playing off of stuff that is already embedded in our community, if that makes sense. And that's why it feels like it's getting louder. It's nothing that's new, but it's getting louder because of the alt-right influence.
Right. Yeah. And I think a lot of people, there was somebody, so even just to put it into perspective, because as much as we know about like racial gaslighting with these things, this also impacts the queer community, LGBTQIA plus community, everything. We're talking about trans people specifically, but it also, that kind of gaslighting exists there as well. Like, to put it into perspective, I've blocked about 3 people in this recording right now that were in the comments that were saying things like, this is all made up, there's no oppression, you're the ones actually doing the oppression. And it starts down that pathway, and I don't even allow for that kind of conversation to begin, because that's the opening of the pipeline, if you will. It begins to start to have this conversation where the real oppressed people are actually the Christians, or the real oppressed people are actually the evangelical church. The real oppressed people, because all these other people who are unnatural are starting to come into the fray, and now they're changing things that weren't supposed to be that way, because we were actually better. What we mean by, and to like another example is the alt-right loves, or you could start to tell some of these kind of dog whistles with it's called a rejection of space and time. And I know that sounds like really trippy and kind of science fiction-y, but it's exemplified in. Have you seen that video? It went viral for a minute. It was this blonde hair, blue-eyed white woman in a blue dress talking about how she wishes she could go back to the 1940s. That's when America was great, and that's when these things. And they talk about this time, this mythical time. That's why it's outside of space as well, because the time that they're talking about never existed. But they're talking about going back in time. It's always going back in time. We have to get back to traditional values, traditional things. And what does that look like? What does that lead to? It looks like subjugation of certain classes of people, but it also has to be a rejection of things that are becoming more normalized now. And trans people are a direct defiance of that act. So that's why transphobia is becoming, quote unquote, more popular or louder right now, is because a trans person is literally the opposite of what they're talking about. And if that becomes normalized, then they don't have a reason to say, let's go back in time. We can't talk about when a woman was supposed to be in her place if you, like Jordan Peterson said, can't tell what a woman is. If I don't know if you're a man or a woman, what the hell am I supposed to do with you? That sentence is so very telling of what he means. Because if you're a woman, I'm supposed to subjugate you. I'm supposed to be above you because I'm a man. But if you're a trans woman, now I'm not really sure, because I'm supposed to... biologically, I'm supposed to agree with you. That's why we're seeing senators asking people whether or not they have a penis. That's why because they have to figure that part out, because they have to know what box to put you in. And trans people stand literally in the way of that thing. That's why it's becoming so loud. And what they're leveraging is, quote unquote, traditional values. Where they get those from is transphobia and homophobia in the black church. That's an easy one to just step right into. Hey, this isn't normal. Remember, this is an abomination, just like your Bible says, just like my Bible, So we agree on the same thing. Hey, when you talk about this podcast, the reason why you're having a hard time dating right now is because women don't know their place. But women don't know their place is because they're confused as to what a woman even is. And that is those trans people's fault. That's whose fault it is. So do you see how we get there from you as a man deserve to have the world, and you deserve to be able to get whatever you want, and you deserve to have the girl and have the house and have the kids and do all that. But in order for you to do that, women have to know their place. And in order for women to know their place, you have to define what a woman is. So that means that you have to get rid of everybody else that confuses you when it comes to that. And that is the pipeline. The first sentence I said was, you're a man that wants to get what he wants in life. And the last sentence I just said to you is, we have to get rid of trans people. So that's what we're talking about. When we say pipeline, that's how quick it goes.
Yep.
But it appears, like you were saying with the PragerU thing, it appears in these videos of like Mike Rowe. Somebody asked for us to repeat the name. The Mike Rowe videos. The Mike Rowe videos, I have seen those. Those are the videos, like he does like the dirty jobs thing. But now they've spun that into, this is what a real man is. A real man is a garbage man. A real man gets his hands dirty. My hands look like this, so her hands can look like that. Gender roles. We have to have gender roles. And if we don't have gender roles, we don't know who to put on the bottom. That's the goal. And so another question I have for you is, cis women, I focus a lot of what I talk about on men, because that's what I know. But it's been said that cis women sometimes get sort of a pass. They're sort of seen as, especially cis white women, are seen as like innocent or oblivious, and they don't really mean any harm or anything like that. They just sort of fall into these things. But if you could speak a little bit more to like kind of because it all sort of falls into it, the crunchy lifestyle, the what is it, like homesteader thing, or
that's the homesteader thing is literally the female equivalent of the micro thing. I'm sorry for saying female like that. I get caught in the language. For women, for men, the alt-right pipeline is a lot more direct with playing into masculinity in the manosphere. For women, it's mostly dominated by New Age spirituality. And that's part of why I talk about mental health things. And that is kind of the glue, it seems like, that holds my page together. Like, that's how you first found my page. You said such nice things about it, by the way. Thank you for that. That was nice. I love your content too. I was very excited for us to be mutuals. But yeah, it's what I'm finding happening. So women, within the gender role of womanhood, we often get gaslit that like our problems are all just in our head. And that turns into saying we're over emotional. Oh, you're bipolar, you're this or that. Or it can also turn into gaslighting women out of physical health problems like Ehlers-Danlos, hypermobility, fibromyalgia, Marfan syndrome, all sorts of things like this. So there are a lot of women who get disillusioned with religion because of patriarchy. They get disillusioned with the medical system because of like medical gaslighting and all that stuff. They get disillusioned with psychology, and then they end up finding New Age spirituality. And that is why so much of the femininity coaches goes back into like the Wicca and then that kind of thing. And then you get homesteader and anti-vaxxer and that sort of stuff. That's how that's the alt-right pipeline for women. Let me double check my notes. Did I hit them all? The manifest
cottagecore.
Huh?
Cottagecore. I think I've seen that. I've seen that word before.
Yeah.
It made my brain itch.
Clean living. Thank you for that comment so much. Clean living, clean eating. It's eating disordered stuff that actually gets a lot of women into the alt-right thing. Oh my gosh, it's something I think about so much because you end up with eating disorders because femininity is designed as a gender role for you to be all mild and meek and tiny and petite and skinny. And that's in an emotional way. Women are supposed to be like quiet and demure and small, but that also relates to the physical way that women are supposed to look with being skinny and more on the frail side is what white supremacy likes for women. Right. And I think it's a combination of trying to eat your feelings or get control over a chaotic life, turning into an eating disorder, which links into depression and also classism, trying to get the skinny body so you can be popular, so you can fit into the Abercrombie clothes, because Abercrombie doesn't make clothes for fat chicks, you know, and you want to be cool, you want to be rich, you want to be skinny, you want to be blonde. This is where beauty standards and femininity and all these things kind of coalesce. And it's those natural pressures that women get put under in society, not natural, but you know what I mean. And that's how the cishet women get into the alt-right. It's struggling to fit into that little box that patriarchy has given you, because patriarchy gives you this promise that if you fit into the box, you'll be safe. And that's a fucking lie. You will never be safe under patriarchy as a woman.
Right. Yes. Exactly. I just watched my my wife's page get her video got the most views that she's ever gotten, but also the most hate that she's ever gotten, and like the most conversation. And it was simply because she started the video. She's pregnant right now, and she was talking about the difference between having a baby during the winter, or being pregnant during the winter, or being pregnant during the summer. That's what she was talking about. And that's the point of the video. I need to highlight that and stress that. That was her point. the first thing she said in the entire video is, something that they don't tell people who are able to get pregnant is that was the sentence that set everyone off. She said, people who are able to get pregnant. And then there was 1,000 people that were just so mad that she didn't say woman or female or whatever. And she was like, but that's not true. It's just people who can get pregnant. It doesn't matter what gender you are. If you can get pregnant, you can get pregnant.
This is the
okay.
Oh my god, this is why I started the white delusion hashtag, because there's a certain point where this shit's just delusional and ignoring reality. And like
Right.
I'm glad you brought that up in the transphobia conversation, because the whole thing about like, chest feeding or like birthing person or people who can get pregnant, all of that transphobic hate gets shoved at trans women. And none of that language is for trans women. That language is for non-binary people and trans men. It's for people like me to be included.
Right.
It doesn't have anything to do with trans women, but the transphobia is laced with misogyny because they hate women. They hate women for not fitting into little boxes. They hate men for not fitting into little boxes. It's
right, exactly, because there's a subtext of that she also pointed out in a couple of follow-up videos that she posted about the topic as well. But I just want to reiterate here. There's a subtext of that is very just patriarchal, misogynistic, and hateful towards women in general, as far as being functional or or useful to a man. Is in order for you to be a woman, you have to be able to get pregnant. Like, that's the subtext that they always say. Like, they're saying like, oh, you can't be a woman unless you can get pregnant. Well, okay, what if you have a hysterectomy? Cisgendered woman has a hysterectomy. She can't get pregnant anymore. What now? Is she not a woman? Am I? Like, and they do think about it. I was about to say they don't think about that, but that is the subtext of the conversation, is that women are vessels to reproduce, and that's their function in society. If they're not fulfilling that role, then they are not truly a woman. And they don't care who that hurts in between. And the thing that my wife pointed out that she thought was so interesting was it was only women that were yelling at her about this. It was only cis women that were yelling at her about this. And it's like, but if something were to happen to you and you were not to be able to become pregnant, are you not a woman anymore? When do you stop being a woman? If that happens, do you not know anybody who falls into this camp or anything like that? Or what if you were born and you just weren't able to get pregnant, but you identify as a woman or are like you're intersex?
Yeah,
that these people exist. Everybody exists. It's spectrum.
Yeah.
And
oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, go on.
Oh,
No. Go on.
This is why I like to talk about white supremacist patriarchal capitalism as a unit, and the way that all of those three things intersect. Because like, they're always like, why you gotta take it back to slavery? And it's like, well, we could understand racism as it functioned to support capitalism. Like, that's part of how we know that systemic discrimination exists, is because Black people, human beings, were considered property, and their value, our value, is based in the labor, right there. And like, you can roll the clock back further, slavery and all that. Like I think the Spaniards and all that crap, we're talking 1400s, 1600s is when they made the pyramid with the blood thing, the Olympia Raza thing, that pyramid.
Mm-hmm.
Patriarchy, as it exists for capitalism, women were also considered property of men. Like, y'all, it's about turning people into property. It's always been about turning people into property. You just forgot that like women couldn't have bank accounts. Like, the way that money plays into this is
Yeah,
You.
like, but the craziest thing to me, circling back to that video of the woman saying that she wished that she was back in the 1940s, and people called her on this, was the one aspect that she was like was the divorce rate wasn't what it was today. The divorce rate was almost zero, and it was like women couldn't get divorced. You had to ask your husband if it was okay. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? And also, I think it's interesting that people don't realize that like the divorce rate's also been going down since that big announcement or that big change in our society where women were able to get divorced. Yeah, for about 10 years. You're right. There was a lot of divorces, but that's because women could finally get divorces. And then it's finally gone down and then leveled out. Marriage isn't as bad as people make it seem, but it has to be. It has to be. That has to be the narrative, because if marriage and divorce isn't super prevalent right now, then there's nothing to go back to. Then if it's not worse than you think it is, then you don't need to make America great again. If America could be better in the future, we don't need to make it like it was before if what it was before is worse than what it is right now. So they have to keep making it seem like what it is right now is so much worse than what it actually is. And speaking of capitalism, I want to talk about an elephant that me and you have been talking about for a little while. Hogwarts is an HBCU. And I've heard a lot of the death of the artist. We need to separate the story from the storyteller. It's okay to support people who hate us because the game might be fun or something like that. I just speak to that for a second, because that was my first kind of tip off that like, what's happening here? Like this feels weird.
So like linking back kind of to what you said before, they are trying to get back to like a better place. And I feel like maybe some of the new focus on transphobia is because they were successful in getting Roe v. Wade overturned. They have completed their goal in their war against women, and in continuing this gender theme, they're going after trans people. And like the thing with Harry Potter, it's a good example of how all these things are connected, because I try to be nice. I try to be decent. I try to appeal to reason. The first thing that I had to say about Harry Potter is that you deserve fantasy and escapism, which is free from bigotry. Don't you want an escape that is actually an escape? Don't you want something that you can feel good about? And isn't that what you want to give to your kids? Because like, you know that Harry, regardless of if you agree or disagree with Harry Potter, you know it's controversial. You know that there's going to be a certain amount of emotional labor that you have to do to engage with this, even if you do give it a pass or whatever. So like, why would you want to set up your kids to have franchises like that? Like, I want to enjoy my favorite media like 20, 30, 50 years from now. If I had kids, I would want them to have that kind of joy, right? It sucks that we're not allowed to have nice things, right? So just as from a self-preservation standpoint of just enjoying a good story, Harry Potter is not a good franchise to engage with, right? And then from a self-preservation standpoint, the transphobia is in the text, but that is an issue that is more with J.K. Rowling. I mean, oh God, it's just so wrong on so many levels, and it's so stupid. How do I even break this down? How wrong it is. I'm exasperated.
I just want to jump in for a second.
Yeah.
While you clear your thoughts, I just want to jump in because we've had both said this. What we mean by in the text is the actual story. So in the storyline, what you're reading, what you're watching in the movies, there's bigotry in the IP, in the property. J.K. Rowling has voiced her opinions in interviews and on Twitter and Instagram and whatever else she does, right? So we know what she meant. But also, you can read it that way, even if she never said a word. You can read the text and still understand it. Like, I called someone out for this just the other day. I said, I was talking about the property and I said, it's full of racism and bigotry. And they said, if you look at the goblins and you see a chosen person, that's on you. But they also did like the double, I don't know if you know this one, the double parenthesis kind of thing around chosen person. So that like,
the echo.
That's a symbol for Jewish people. So if you all, just little sidebar, I've said this before, but if you ever see like double parentheses, that means Jewish people. So they put chosen person double parentheses, then that's on you for seeing that. And I responded and said, I never said what characters I was talking about. I never gave you an example of what I was talking about. The fact that you instinctually knew what characters I was talking about because it's so blatant means that you know. Like you can see it. You can look at them. Yes, the snivelly goblin characters that literally eat money. Yes.
It's the willful ignorance and the what's it was a song that was trending on this stupid app. It's when you do stuff on the weaponized incompetence and willful ignorance around these things. Yeah, I see someone in the comment section did the so that set of parentheses, it's called an echo. And it actually I brought up willful ignorance because of the way that dog whistles work. Because when we're trying to recognize problems with like anti-Semitism, anti-Blackness, and all that sort of stuff, we have to recognize dog whistles. But the way that dog whistles operate is that you have to understand context. And you can't just, like, I used to make a lot of dog whistle content, and I stopped because I realized people were applying them in a very black and white, unnuanced way, where they just go start attacking people. So, for example, that echo is so famous as an anti-Semitic dog whistle that there are a lot of Jewish people and Jewish content creators who will echo themselves as an act of defiance, kind of like how Black people use the N-word. So like when you are out and about on TikTok and you see someone's username with the parentheses around it, you have to go, crap, is this a Yahtzee that is being anti-Semitic, or is this a Jewish person making a tongue-in-cheek joke? And like, I just, right. God, if you don't take anything else from this podcast, please just take nuance in media literacy and just to think about the things that you're taking in before you react to them. Because I would hate for someone watching this to be like, that's anti-Semitic. And then they end up like saying something really hateful to a Jewish person who was just making a joke, you know?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There's certain, yes, exactly. Like you were saying, there's certain contexts, like it instinctual. If somebody is talking about somebody else, that may be a clue. If they're defending schmazzies and they use those things, now you're starting to put those things together. Okay, you're defending schmazzy behavior and you're using things that are echoes for neo-Nazis.
And this is why I really am so uncomfortable with the Hogwarts HBCU trend, because there are aspects of the Harry Potter franchise that are used as dog whistles against trans people and against Jewish people. And now we have all these Black people, well, meaning, we're reclaiming the franchise and all that shit. And now y'all are creating plausible deniability and a bunch of confusion around this franchise and what it means when people are representing that out in public. Like, I don't engage with people that do Harry Potter shit in public at this point because everyone knows what it's associated with. It's like I had to have the same conversation with lesbians and Doc Marten boots, right? There are certain things. There's a video trending right now of a trans non-binary person that was like making a joke where she was like, Okay, so like lesbians really also white lesbians also really enjoy that 1940s 1950s aesthetic, right? So this trans
Mm-hmm.
non-binary person found a video of like an actual alt-right trad wife looking horribly miserable in her marriage, right? And now the white trans person dresses up in their cute little 1940s 50s clothes to be like, you could just leave your husband and be gay, you know. Like, we both like the same aesthetic. We're already doing the thing. Wouldn't you love a hand knit sweater from your partner instead of a man that treats you like shit? And like, I understand that it was a joke meant to point out how self destructive and fucked up these white supremacist, let's go back to the 1940s and 50s beliefs are. But that comment section was full of people that thought she was legitimately fucking flirty. That comment section was full of people who did not recognize that traditional wife was a dog whistle for white supremacist beliefs. And like, people fuck around with these franchises, you think you're
Right.
making jokey jokes, and it's not a joke. You're doing shit that gives these very dangerous people plausible deniability, that lets them normalize their beliefs, that lets them have space on platforms to speak their nonsense. It's not okay.
Yes, exactly. Like there's so many. We could do this all night discussing, like just talking about so many different dog whistles, especially those things that I think a lot of people don't realize, like that hashtag traditional wife. You got to
Literally
be
dog whistle.
and yeah, and again, use context for the videos, because there are people that are out there kind of muddying the water, making it a little murky for you to really understand what it is. So you have to kind of look at the entire account or the entire video or like everything to really, really, really understand what this person actually means. Are they trying the joke? Did they not get the joke? But that also means kind of do your homework, and like you were saying with the Harry Potter thing, if you realize that it's something that's super divisive, why even why even start playing in that world? Like, the thing that makes me really sad is that I'm mutuals with a lot of black artists, black writers that are trying to get their fantasy work out there. And I'm like, Harry Potter was literally never for us. Not ever. It was never for us. We weren't in the books. They weren't talking about us. I know there's gonna be somebody saying right now, but Hermione was black. No, she wasn't. She just never said she was white. And we all jumped on the fact that it was okay for us to just assume that she could be black. And J.K. Rowling never said that it was okay. She said that it was fine because she was also getting paid from that. So she's not going to talk bad about the musical that's paying her money right then. Like, you got to look at the entire picture to understand those things. So there's black properties that are magical, that are fae, that are wizards, that are science fiction, that are all of these things, anything that you want them to be. Octavia Butler existed. Like there's so much for you to want to read, like, or you want to consume. And there's so many artists that are trying their hardest right now. And something that I always say, and somebody asked earlier, what can we do? Or like, how can we support these people? Or how can we support these things? Start looking for the correct content. Start looking for this content, because there's trans people making content that it's them just doing whatever they do, and they happen to be trans. Being trans isn't all of what they are. I always think of like the person that fixes up like their housing, like the houses, or like they watch videos of people like doing like home constructions or whatever. Yeah. And just makes fun of it or something like that. Them being trans is not the point of their page. It's like home improvement is the point of their page. Like, that's what it is. They also talk about trans things because they are, just like we talk about black things because we are. But that isn't the point of their page. And if you want to normalize this in or change your mind or re-socialize yourself, if we're gonna kind of touch back on something that's a little silly, but re-socialize yourself into this. Yes, seek out that content, watch those creators, have that be normal, so that when you do see a trans person in the wild, you're not blown away, or you're not staring, or you're not being weird, or you're not uncomfortable, you don't feel strange, because it's usual. It's normal. That would be some advice that I would give. Michael LeBourne is here. That is an amazing writer that writes fantasy work. Please go like him. Please go read his books.
This whole publishing company, which also supports other indie writers of color, like freaking amazing. I'm so glad that the algorithm brought him here, because I was gonna plug him anyway. Everyone support Michael LeBourne and DYB Publishing.
Yes, please. Tales of Gardim. I don't want to mispronounce it, but that's another artist that is making fantasy worlds, animating them, putting them out every day. You go back, watch all of their stuff. And Gardim. Okay, got it. But I gave some I guess like a little bit of a tip or perspective just from the outside looking in. But as somebody who's part of that community, if a cishet person, especially someone in the Black community, wants to be a better, I don't like this word, ally, or better assistant, a better accomplice or aid to the advancement of the trans community, or at least just help shelter, shield, what do you think that, what would you say? What is an actionable item that you can give to somebody?
Love us, I guess, be supportive. Being trans can be really hard and isolating because it is not widely socially accepted. It may look like it sometimes on the internet. But I made a video just a few days ago. It's like as a Black trans person, you know, I go into like the white queer community and I always have to call them out for being racist. And then I go into the Black community and then I have to deal with transphobia there. And it's like, where do I go? I have all of these different intersecting identities. You would think that would mean that there's a million different communities that I get to be a part of, but they all end up isolating me from the other, and you end up alone. And that sucks. So if you have someone in your life that you love, just fucking love them. Why? That's it. That's the best thing you can do, and stick up for that person. Like, you know, because I don't have the energy to be correcting people about my pronouns. I honestly don't care that much about my pronouns. But when there's someone who cares about me, notices, hey, the boss misgendered you, the coworker misgendered you, see something, say something type stuff, you know? Like, I expect my white friends to speak up when they're around people who are saying racist stuff. I expect my cisgender friends to speak up when they hear transphobic things.
Yeah. Just don't let it exist in your presence. I would say be a space where transphobia isn't safe around you. You should be a presence where if you walk in the room and someone was about to tell a transphobic joke, they think twice, because you're there, because you're a place. And if everybody starts to do that, then the people who are transphobic will just stop talking, because they won't have a safe place to keep that rhetoric. It won't be accepted for them to be able to do that. Another tip that I know that you just said that like you're not too big on pronouns. I know some people are really big on pronouns. Another thing too, I would say with pronouns, this is just something that I've heard a few times. I don't know how don't take it as gospel, but just like with other personal things about people, maybe ask a few other questions before. Just like, don't just walk up and just be like, hey, what's your pronouns? And not know that person's name. Like, they're a whole person. They're not just a he, she, they, they, z, zim. That's not, they're not just all of those things. Just like you're not just those things. If someone were to walk up to you and just be like, hey, are you he or she? You would probably answer them, but be like, you don't introduce yourself first. Just say your name, or you could just say my name, because we're not close enough for you to be referring to me, because that's what it would be if you're using a pronoun. So I don't even know you yet. Don't talk about me. Just use my name. So yes, please just talk to people first.
Like, you nailed it. That's literally why I do not care about pronouns officially, because I've noticed that people use pronouns to be performative. It's, you don't actually care about my identity or how I see myself, or like gender discrimination or transphobia. You just want to look right and do the right thing. And pronouns are like an easy get out of jail free card for like, I'm woke, I'm doing the thing, I use the right pronouns. When like pronouns are a super, super basic surface level thing. It's like, if you fuck up my pronouns, it shows me just how little you care. But like, if you, but how do I say this? It's like, pronouns mean very, very little because I am so much bigger than that. But also, when you get them wrong, that can be evidence of how little I mean to you as a person, if that makes sense. It's
Right.
like, it's like a canary almost of there's other videos that we make about like that you've been make we tag each other like so much. I think a lot of the problems with transphobia in the Black community, I don't know how much time we have because this is kind of a big direction to go into with this conversation.
Keep going.
But white queer people are the face of the trans movement, and white people fall into a lot of pitfalls. Like, we're talking about how my identity is so much more than being trans, or like how I think we're talking about Mercury Stardust, the trans handyman. Her identity is so much more than being trans as the handyman. There are white queer people who turn being queer into their whole identity. There are white queer people who turn their anti-racism work into their whole identity so that they can marginalize their little queer identity to get out of being held accountable for being racist. And a lot of the introduction conversations that Black people have to what it means to be trans are written by white folks. And it's like, we can smell the racism in it just from the jump. Like, you don't know what it means to be trans. The white person explaining to you what it means to be trans is speaking from a place of white privilege, and it makes the whole thing sound like a bunch of shit, right? Like, it's like a bad introduction to the topic, if that makes sense. And I think that might be part of the reason why there is so much pushback from the Black community about trans stuff. Yes, it is just straight up transphobia and homophobia and shit that's embedded in the Black community, but like, white people also can be really shitty spokespersons. Like,
yeah, I think a lot of the Black community, I think a lot of the Black community has had raises an eyebrow at things that were loudly presented to us from white spaces, and those often become white things. Like, that's white people shit. Like, Black people don't do trans stuff. That's white people shit. Like, we don't do that. Like, but every single Black History Month, like, we talk about pride, and everybody real proud. Like, that was started by a Black woman. Like, we all remember that. We remember that story, but the rest of the year, it's like, being trans is white people shit. Like, that's not that. Being gay is white people shit. Because, like you said, a lot of the spokespeople or a lot of the faces of it, because of embedded racism that presents white faces to us as white as default, ends up being an issue when it comes to feeding this back into the Black community. And somebody was asking, what's a good way to what's a good way to, with something simple like pronouns, to address it if somebody's being microaggressive about it, they're using the wrong pronoun or whatever, right? I simply just say the correct one. Like if somebody is misgendering someone, I will repeat the correct pronoun to them over and over again until they start to get it. And then hopefully the other people in the area start to get it as well. And that person becomes embarrassed. Being embarrassed is a really good learning tool. So you don't have to worry about being a quote unquote asshole about something. Just, yeah, if that person feels some kind of way because they misspoke or made a social faux pas, that's on them. If you correct them with the correct information and they now feel embarrassed because of that, good. They won't forget it. And hopefully they won't do it again because they don't want to feel like that again. Like you don't want to be hurtful. You don't want to hurt somebody. But yeah, if the guy, your boss at the office, he keeps saying the wrong thing, just keep saying the right thing to him until he feels uncomfortable. It's also a byproduct of how heavily the Black community is tied to Christianity. Yeah, we talked about the Black church a little bit earlier with and how aspects of the white church influences that and eggs that on. And now we have a lot of rejection from the Black church of things that could be normalized in the Black community because they're emulating the white church. Or we have podcast bros emulating white patriarchy because they want their woman in line, just like the good book written by the white guy said. Like that's how we're supposed to women are supposed to be in their place, and they're supposed to understand that. And it's like, but where'd you learn that? Where'd you get that from? Why do you think that? Where did that all come from? Drill into that, because it's not that's all made up, and it's an ownership thing.
It is. It's like, wasn't the version of the Bible they gave to enslaved people had Exodus missing out of it because they didn't want us to get ideas about freedom? Like, yep. Literally everything about Christianity, like it just has a lot of plot holes. That's all. The plot of the Black church there's a lot of plot holes in the Black church. That's all.
Right. What Western Christianity is like how Americanized evangelical, the American church is heavily embedded with racism. The Eastern philosophy of it is what was from Africa, what was, and it's different. Like, so it's really hard to be a Black American and have a different understanding without deconstructing where white supremacy has been playing a huge role in your denomination or your understanding of the church. Like the Southern Baptist Conference, like we have, like the Baptist Church for a long time didn't allow Black people in it until Black people just started doing it, and then the AME Church existed, and there's so much we can completely get into it, but the idea is white supremacy is prolific throughout a lot of what we digest, and a lot of the rejection that we see is because of a rejection of just white spokesmanship sometimes, but also an embrace of white disgust with things that are natural within the world. And it's just a perspective that we adopt.
And that's exactly, it's the Hogwarts HBCU thing. On the one end, it's Black people responding to the fact that everything gets culturally appropriated from us. Everything gets taken from us. We have a right to reclaim things, but also aligning ourselves with the white supremacist turf gets us some sort of power and proximity to whiteness with the transphobia and shit. I don't know. It doesn't make sense. Some other Black person can explain it. Why we would do that. I don't know why we do that, but I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, exactly what we were just saying and getting into the idea of spokesmanship, like the a proximity to white power is still perceived as black power in a lot of these spaces that are supposed to be self-help kind of spaces, I'll say. So not black power in the sense of black power, but to attain true power is to be a black capitalist or to attain some sort of wealth or things like that. So to align ourselves with that's the reason why we don't seek out black fantasy written by black authors or designed by black artists. We don't seek out those things, and that's not prolific in the black community as much as it could be because we want the popular one. J.K. Rowling's already famous. Harry Potter's already famous. So we're going to reclaim that instead of build up what we could. There's other IP that we could be building up, but we don't build those things up. Instead, we latch on to something that's already quote unquote powerful.
And we really should be building up our own stuff more because, like, I want more Black fantasy because fantasy as a genre is usually built around like European medieval history. It really is never actually for us. You know, I want more Afrofuturism, y'all. Yes, we need more stuff for us.
There is a show. If I can just gently plug something that I love that I've been watching with my kids and my wife, like our whole family's fell in love with the show. My Dad, the Bounty Hunter. It's such an original idea. Like as far as the world building goes, it's Black Guy Mandalorian, to be honest. Like it's a multi-planet space exploration, high fantasy sci-fi show led by completely black characters where them being black isn't the point, but they are black. They're black as hell. The score is black. Everything is black music written by black people to appeal to black people. Like the action scenes aren't. I was making a joke the other day with my wife. I was saying like in any other series, this would be like scored by like an AC/DC cover or something like that, but it's not. It's scored by this really energetic hip hop song with an orchestra behind it. Like that's the score that they've been putting to it. Like. These properties do exist. Like this, the stuff is existing, and we are seeing. If you need to go down this road, we are seeing larger companies like Netflix and Disney Plus seeing the writing on the wall and being like, "We've been ignoring black people for like ever when the Black Panther came out. We've been ignoring them until then. So now like we're gonna start doing stuff or showing you guys stuff and having these and investing in these properties because it turns out black nerds exist. Black people love doing cosplay. Black people love sci-fi. Black people love Dungeons and Dragons. Black people love all of this stuff just like everybody else. And we've been missing an entire market. And it's like, I mean, fine. If that gets this young kid who's been drawing and doing this stuff for years, gets him his first show or his only show, take that Netflix money. Bring that back to our community. That's fine. Yeah. We'll take them. Give us the money and let us do more in different stories.
Oh yeah, I'm so excited for this. It looks so cute. I love animated stuff. Yes.
Yeah, and it is, if I can gush on it for a second, it is one of the, like, it is such a gorgeous looking show for animation, especially for television. Like a 10-part Netflix series. I think it's beautiful looking, and that it's such a cool story. The writer, he voices one of the characters, and he directs some of the episodes. But the creator of the show, this is his first show, and it's amazing that he did this entire thing. But he's been in the background. He's been the head animator on all these DreamWorks, Disney Pixar films for the better part of 2 decades. He's been working on all of this other stuff, just honing his craft and getting to know people. And then finally, he's like, "This is the show that I want to do." And all of his animation buddies came with him, and they made probably the most gorgeous show on Netflix right now. That's animation with black people that look like black people, and you know what I mean by that.
I know what you mean.
Their skin, their hair, the texture, everything. They look like black people. And it's a heartwarming story. But yeah, I can't talk about it enough because I love finding stuff like this and seeing things like this. So happy to see little babies having black characters. Yeah, and heroes to draw as they grow up. I love that. I love that too.
Yeah. Man, Wendell and Wild is the best. Oh man, like that's what I'm talking about with why would we engage with stuff like Harry Potter? Like I love Tim Burton as like an alt person. Grungy type gothy things, you know. I loved all the Tim Burton stuff. And like hearing the way that he really sees black people was so disheartening. And to have Wendell and Wild, like I don't have kids, but if I did, I'd be so happy that they get to grow up with that sort of stuff and knowing that it's never going to be ripped away from them down the road. Knocking on wood for Key and Peele. Please don't do no stupid shit, y'all. Please don't. Please don't. Yeah, I can't wait to cosplay that character with my green hair and my red. Oh, it's gonna be the first thing I do when I dye my hair green. Is I'm gonna cosplay.
Do it.
Yes.
Do it. Yeah, and yeah, I'm excited about it too. Like like I mean, over the summer we were talking about like watching all those little black girls watch, or just black kids in general watch the trailer for The Little Mermaid, and seeing their parents crying, like because they're like, my kids get to grow up with this stuff, like. Seeing kids get so excited seeing my kids get excited because the new Black Panther's coming out, or there's these new characters, or did you know about this? Or my kid came back from a comic book store and she had an Ironheart. They had an Ironheart comic, and they're just so excited because they're like, it's like Iron Man, but it's a black woman. And I was like, yes, like that's what it is. And just getting so excited and seeing some of the other stuff that Disney is doing. Oh my gosh, I can't think of her name. The Devil Dino. There's a creator on here that worked on that Disney Plus show, the Devil Dinosaur, and I can't remember that character's name. But it's escaping me right now if somebody wants to throw it up in the comments. But Moon Girl, yes, Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. There's a creator on this app that worked on it and has been talking about it, really excited. And I'm just super excited about that show because of knowing what that means for things. Like I think a lot of people there's a ton of people that read comics and stuff like that, but I think especially a lot of white folks who don't know these characters or didn't see these short runs, it's really powerful to me to see black women or other women of color in the MCU being the characters that they're picking are literally the smartest characters in their entire universe. And like Moon Girl is the smartest MCU, or is the smartest character in Marvel. This has been said many times. And I love that. Like, yes, bring these characters from these small characters, bring these characters back out. I love this.
Why is the community not talking about this? I'm sorry. I'm looking up Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, and like, this is one of our little inside jokes, is that all of us have a special interest in dinosaurs. Okay. So like, I went to go see Suits, the Tyrannosaurus Rex at the Field Museum, and it was so beautiful. I literally cried. I freaking love dinosaurs. And because my niche is neurodivergence, I'm kind of like all over the place right now because like we're talking about having representation for little Black kids, and being a blurred and all Black person that was always teased for shit like anime and being a geek. It does. I mean, Black people need representation in sci-fi and media and all of this stuff, but like, to go from being someone who was bullied for liking this stuff because it is so white to seeing yourself represented in it, this freaks me out. This is so cool. And she's super smart, like my little hyperlexic ass. Oh my God, I could be a little Black girl superhero with a dinosaur.
My daughter loves dinosaurs, especially T-Rexes, and she's 2.5, and she is in awe. Like, we'll just stare at she wants to see the girl and her dinosaur. That's what she wants to watch. Yeah. She's on roller skates. Her family owns the local roller skating rink, and it's like a classic 70s disco roller skating rink, and like, the ability for them to create or have Black characters where being Black isn't central to who they are, but they're not Black. And I think a lot of Black folk know what I mean when I say that. Like, the plot doesn't need them to be Black, but they exude Blackness. And there's cultural affects that are in the text that when you look at these IP, you're like, yeah, this is a show that everybody can enjoy, but Black people, this will have like a special place for them because they'll get certain cultural things that's happening with it. Yes, please go support this show. I think it's on Disney Plus, it's on Disney Now, and it's on the Disney Channel. And there's a couple of creators that are on TikTok that worked on the show and have been talking about it. Her name is escaping me. She wrote The Protectors of Wakanda. Yes, IP is intellectual property. But yeah, so I could talk about this all night because I love, I'm just so ecstatic at the stuff, just happy for my kids to be able to grow up in this world where hopefully it's a little gentler to them than it was to us,
Yeah. And the bit that you said about representation, I want to expand on that because I love Everything Everywhere All at Once. Have you seen it yet?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to try to not give too many spoilers for people that for some reason haven't seen it yet. You should go watch it. But people kept telling me to watch this movie because it's great Asian representation. And like, that is the undersell of the century. Like, Everything Everywhere All at Once, I think it's so amazing because of what you're saying, where it is a uniquely Chinese film, but it's not about being like Chinese at all, right? Like the plot of the movie with the way that they switch universes would not be possible without the way that martial arts have become a staple trope within Western media, within Hollywood. Like, you cannot take Chinese people or Asianness out of this movie. But also it's not about that at all. Like, one of the coolest things with this movie visually is or not just visually, but also it's another gag with the character switching, is when they switch from speaking Chinese to speaking English. And as someone who doesn't speak Chinese, like, or anytime I'm watching a piece of media that's not in English, people switching back and forth between languages, that is something that kind of like takes me out of immersion, if that makes sense. Because like, it's a different thing for me. But in Everything Everywhere All at Once, switching between Chinese and English was actually a narrative device to tell you more about what's happening in the story. Like, Everything Everywhere All at Once, it is such a deeply human story that it would be impossible to deliver that message without pulling on what it really meant for you to be human. And a story like that is naturally going to have your cultural, your ethnic, your racial identity be part of it, but it's not about your racial identity. It's just about you being human. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. I love representation like that. If you guys want to go back, I think it's the second or third episode that I did with Michael LeBourne was on, and we were talking. And one of the things, actually, we talked about Harry Potter on that episode too, and how Harry Potter is actually pretty damn boring as a story, but the one thing that we talked about as far as representation goes, and he said it, I'm going to paraphrase here, but the one thing that he pointed out is that he wanted representation to be so normal that not that he wanted to remove black characters, but he wanted to be able to. He wanted them being black to be something that is a part of the story, but it isn't the reason why they're in the story. Like, they don't need to be black, but because they are black, there's certain things that are cultural to the story. But if you change the character, some of that culture stuff changes, but the plot of the story doesn't completely change. Like, people always use examples when the Little Mermaid came out. They were like, "Oh, well, what if we made the Princess and the Frog white?" You literally can't make the Princess and the Frog white because it would change the story. The plot is different because she needs to be black in order for that plot to make sense. It doesn't make sense if she's white because there isn't a struggle for her to get a loan if she's a white woman. They telegraph that completely, that the reason why she doesn't get the loan for the business is because she's black and she's in Louisiana in the 1920s. That's the reason why. And so if she's white, the movie doesn't happen. She doesn't make a deal with the devil. She doesn't turn into a frog. None of it happens because she would have walked in, got the loan, and walked back out and opened a restaurant, and then it would have been 10 minutes long. Like, it wouldn't have been a movie. And so what he was saying, what I think we're saying right now, is that the characters being culturally, like, having their culture shine through, but the plot isn't like, oh yeah, see, they gotta be black, or it has to be part of it in order for us to sustain this plot. I like it when the stories are like that. Like, the characters don't need to be black, but it's great that they are.
Yeah. And I think this kind of goes back to the whole like trauma exhaustion sort of a thing with like being a black person trying to engage with black media. Like, there was a TikTok that's like, name a black movie where the plot doesn't revolve around black trauma. And like, that's hard. Like, I talked about Wendell and Wild. like, I love Wendell and Wild, but the movie literally stops to talk about corporate prisons. Right. And like there.
Yeah. Ooh, boy. Yeah. Boy, does it. They didn't shy away from that. They were like, this is what it's about. Prison is bad. We should get rid of them. I was like, wow, yeah. You guys swung for the fences on that one. But yeah. Exactly. That's exactly the point of the movie.
Yeah, it's like, and I appreciate that. We need media like that, but it is often exhausting. That's like, can we think of a Brandy Cinderella? There we go. Not about black trauma. Like just to sit and be like, I want to absorb media with people that look like me, but then also not have my PTSD triggered at the same time. Why is that so hard?
Right. And somebody's saying in the comments that like it's not that hard, and I agree with you that the properties are out there. I just want them to be famous. To be frank, to be like as cavalier about it as I can. Like, you're right. There's thousands of properties that do that. I want them to be as famous as Harry Potter, or more so. I want them to be bigger than Star Wars. Like, that's what I want. Like, you're right. The properties exist, but let's also go back 20 years through the Oscars and you tell me which ones won and what they and I bet you I'll tell you a bunch of them that are about slaves. So, I mean, let's also be for real about what is what is presented in the zeitgeist. Like, it's okay to realize that those things exist, but I want the best for us. Like, I don't want us to always be in the shadows loving our stuff. I want everybody to love our stuff. I want the next property that is black folk being black folk, but the plot doesn't got nothing to do with it, and we're just happy, like just doing whatever, or solving mysteries, or being adventurers, or cave diving, or whatever it is. I want that thing to be bigger than Star Wars. And I want that to be the thing that we think about. Like, that's what we mean by that. Like, I'm not trying to take away from your point. I understand your point, but yeah, that's what we're trying to get to here.
Totally. Yeah. It doesn't exist. It's just not what's pushed. And like, we need more Black joy. Well, I don't need to repeat what you said. What you said was perfect. So there.
And no, yeah, we do. We need more. Yes. More black joy. But as you all can see, and I'll let you get out of here. We've been talking for about a little over 90 minutes. But I'll let you get running here, because I'm gonna ask you a couple final questions. But as y'all can see, we're a little all over the place, but we also talk a lot about intersectionality, and what that means for the different aspects of the communities that we cross over with. So I think that's an important kind of note to like end on. This is how we got here, is because we need to talk about representation. We need to talk about white is default. And we need to talk about how all of those things relate back to the demonization of and the growth of homophobia being just exported to the Black community, and transphobia being exported to the Black community and uplifted there for some reason right now. We have to dissect all of it, because a lot of these conversations are super nuanced, and there's a huge web of reasons as to why all of this stuff happens. So I asked you just a second ago, what's something that Black folk or anybody can do to help the trans community. And I just want you to just echo that one more time. Like, what if I want to combat this, I want to stand with folk. What's the first thing that you think that I can do? I love my trans folk. I love the people in my life, but what's something I can do tomorrow?
For actionable things, I would pay attention to what's happening in your state. I think it's about half of the states in the United States right now have some sort of very scary anti-trans legislation that's happening in them. I have some friends in West Virginia that I'm real worried about, because if you actually, the way the law is written would essentially make it illegal to be trans in West Virginia. It's real. The wording of the law is where you can't be trans within half of a mile of a school. But if you've ever been in a community in West Virginia, literally everything is within half a mile of a school. And so a lot of the laws and the things are not as straightforward as people think that they are. If it's anti-trans legislation, it's anti-trans legislation. There's some states that are banning gender affirming care, that are doing this or that. I mean, I don't want to be the get out and vote person, but like we're talking about legal systemic genocide against the trans community. As one person, one of the most powerful things that you can do is to have a political voice and make sure that your state legislature knows that it's not okay to kill trans people. Aside from loving the trans people in your life, that's the deal. Make sure people are aware of the fact that this is a trans genocide. And the academic people who study genocide have said, yes, we are checking all the little fucking boxes for what it means to be in genocide. That's what's happening to trans people right now.
All right. And somebody's thank you, Allie Collins is dropping in the comments. Check your schools too. I know there's a big one happening in Oklahoma. Florida's always a problem. Texas is always a problem. But also something else that you could do, like if you want to get really, really, really local, you know, you don't think state elections or whatever, find out who's on your school board. Make sure your kids are safe. Make sure the kids in your community are safe, because that's the next generations, and they know that that's the next generations, and that's part of genocide, is controlling the population, controlling the generations. So find out who's on your school board and find out what the rules are that are being implemented at your school, or what the laws are surrounding your schools, because they're changing those things very subtly, and you got to check the wording, like you just said. Check the wording on it, because some of them are intentionally vague or murky so that it's a bigger net for them to catch whatever they're trying to do or stop whatever they're trying to do. So that would be the last piece that I would leave you with. Please just check those things. But do me a favor, remind everybody who you are and where they can find you.
Oh, I'm Alina Gene. I'm on TikTok, Alina.Gene, YouTube, Alina Gene Lee, Instagram, Alina Gene, and patreon.com/Alina Gene. Yay.
Yeah, check out the Patreon. Keep doing yes. But thank you so much. I love you so much. Thank you for coming and hanging out with me, and all the folks that were hanging out with us. If there were some people that were asking, but yes, this is a podcast. This is a Conscious Environment podcast. It's on Apple Music and Spotify and iHeartRadio and something else and something else and something else. But yeah, this episode will be up in just a couple of weeks. That every Tuesday episode drops. Every Thursday we record a new one. But I love you guys so much. Thank you, Alina, for coming and hanging out with me. I appreciate you. I'm gonna tag you in more videos this week. We got to get the words out. We gotta we gotta yell at people more. That's what we need to do.
Yeah, the algorithm likes that more.
Oh man! All right, but I love you guys. Yeah, everybody have a good night.
Thanks so much, y'all. Love you. Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Conscious Environment podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed that as much as I enjoyed recording it for you. And thank you again to Alina for coming through. He is a wealth of knowledge when it comes to dog whistles, especially surrounding the trans community, but kind of all sorts of things. And I hope you learned something, because I definitely did. Go check out his TikTok. The videos there are even more detailed than we can get into during the podcast episode. So go check those out as well. If you want to support the show financially, there are Venmo and Cashapp links down below, as well as a bonfire link to our merch site. If you want to get a little bit more bang for your buck and you want to pick up a couple of shirts, you can go over there and do that as well. If you can't support the show financially, I completely understand, but one of the best ways to help the show out is with 5-star reviews and apparently downloads. I guess that's like the new currency for podcasts. Or just tell a friend, tell your mama, she'll love it. And last thing, remember, I love you, and go drink water. Right now. Stop and go drink water. Okay. Bye. I'll see you next week.